The conference room picked up the sound of a mouse click just before 4 p.m. on Monday, March 10th. The big presentation was 2 days away, and the final slide deck was up on the wall. There it was, my name bouncing in the slide's dorky little animated entrance. Maya Rhodes, Senior Software Architect. I watched it land at the bottom of the credits, and then I watched Derek's cursor hover over it. Highlight, delete. He didn't even look back at me. He just kept typing, smoothing over the layout so the line I'd occupied for 12 weeks simply didn't exist anymore. I stood in the doorway. I had walked in carrying 2 coffees. One was for him. I was holding mine, and I was supposed to hold his, but I just stood there. "Hey, Maya." He didn't turn around. Good timing. "Just polishing the final approval slide." I looked at the screen. The slide was titled Project Execution Team. There was Derek's name, Project Lead. There was a junior associate's name, Michael, who had written precisely 1 onboarding email. And there was a line that used to say my name. It was now conspicuously not there. "Looks different," I said. "Yeah," he said, still typing. "The client sent over their preferred format this morning." Single point of contact. Cleaner, less clutter. He finally turned and flashed a smile. Warm, practiced, they really liked the streamlined look. I did not ask about my name. I did not push back. I stood there, in my cardigan, holding a lukewarm latte, and I said, "Makes sense." He said, "Great," and turned back to the screen. And I watched the cursor dab at the corner of a diagram. I knew that diagram. I had drawn that architecture in late January at 9:40 at night with a terrible French press and an empty office at 9:42. The database logic? Mine. Published back-end logic is published logic. But I had written the implementation notes. I had designed the microservices tree. The way he was clicking and dragging at that diagram, rearranging the icons, you'd think he had sketched it on a napkin at brunch. I sat down in the guest chair. He didn't invite me. I sat anyway. "Did you get the change requests from Nexacorp security team?" I asked. "The OAuth layer." "Handled," he said. "I reworked the auth flow last week." I had reworked the auth flow last week. I had sent him the updated token schema on Thursday evening, and he had replied, "Thanks," with a thumbs up emoji. That was the deepest technical contribution Derek had made to the project, the 9 months I had worked there. A thumbs up emoji. And a salary figure that I only knew because our HR portal was far more permissive than people thought. $160,000. I made $140. So Derek was paid $20,000 more to present, to host a kickoff, to send the recaps. And I was paid to disappear from the last slide. "Did you want to run through your notes?" I asked. "For your presentation section on scalability?" He waved a hand. "Body language, confident. I have the notes you sent. It'll be fine. Not, I studied the notes you sent. Not good notes, by the way. I have the notes you sent." Like they were a water bottle he had tossed in his bag. I thought about pointing out a discrepancy in the draft slide header. I thought about asking if the meeting invite was updated because I had noticed I hadn't received the client-facing calendar update for Thursday. I thought about whether the coffee in my hand was getting cold enough that I should just leave. I didn't leave. I opened my laptop. It made the room hum softly, and Derek didn't look over because he didn't care. I opened the shared drive. Brightline, Nexacorp, deliverables, design docs, architecture spec. I clicked version history, 38 versions. 37 versions had me listed as the author or last editor. Version 38, edited earlier today at 2039 p.m., edited by Derek Farrow. I clicked and I closed the version history. I opened the comms folder. Outstanding decisions log. I clicked through thread after thread, and that's when I noticed the pattern. 4 weeks ago, I had written the decision log entry about the Kinesis Stream pipeline. It had my initials next to the rationale, MR. This week, I scrolled into the current published copy, and my initials had been stripped out. The rationale was still there, nearly word for word, but the name it belonged to had been carefully erased, reattributed to NF, because those were Derek's initials. No big announcement, there was no scandal, just surgical edits spread over a month. I got up, set the coffee next to his elbow. He didn't say thanks. Casual, normal, mechanical. "I'm set for Thursday," I said. "If you need any detail on the stream processing layer, you know where to find me." "Oh, that's covered too," he said. "Actually, the client mentioned they prefer a single point of contact." "You're brilliant, Maya, but the presence of too many engineers can muddy the credibility of the narrative." He looked up and smiled, a smile so smooth it could have come off an assembly line. "It's a concise story, you know. Just a cleaner sequence." Cleaner. The story was cleaner, without the woman who built half of its skeleton. I looked at my own desk, the desk I had designed a whole infrastructure on. Whiteboard markers, sticky notes, a photo of my dog. I looked at Derek. Understood. He swiveled around to the deck. And in the silence of that conference room, with the hum of the air conditioner and the tiny red recording light of the ceiling microphone that no one uses, I made my first decision. It wasn't rage. Rage splits people. This was sharper. It was cooler. It was the click of a keyboard key that I would never unreverse. It was the sound of a trapdoor swinging open, slowly, almost gently. He finished the deck at 4022. He packed his laptop. He walked past me, and he patted the back of my chair just once. "Great teamwork, Maya." I nodded and nodded. The smile I gave him didn't reach my eyes. I was already thinking about the version history tab. The last edit. The most rigorous way to show someone what they've done is to let them paint over a wall that would stand without paint. I thought about the version history I had saved, the earlier deliverable, the sign-off log. No confrontation, no tears. At 4023 on a Monday in March, I made a plan. And with a voice like honey, I said, "You too, Derek." Before I stood up, I pressed F12. I saved the current slide deck with his edits to a private folder. Back up. Just in case the walls learn to fall soon. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing to Revenger for more tales of quiet, methodical comeuppance. There is a lifetime between Friday the 13th and showing your true work. I intend to use each second of it. The next morning, I walked into the office at 7058, 2 minutes early. The building was quiet, the coffee machine still warming up. I liked it that way. No chatter, no Derek holding court in the break room. Just me, my laptop, and the shared drive. I started with the architecture spec, version 38, edited by Derek on Monday at 2039 p.m. I clicked into the version history and scrolled past his changes. There it was. Version 37, authored by me 3 weeks earlier. I opened it side by side with his version. He had moved 3 paragraphs, changed 2 headers, and replaced my title from Principal Architect to Contributor. That was it. That was his entire contribution to the document that defined the project's entire back-end structure. My name was gone. The work was not. I saved the comparison as a screenshot. Then I went to my sent folder. I scrolled back to late January, the night I drew the architecture diagram. There was the email I sent Derek at 9040 p.m. on a Tuesday. After a 12-hour day, the subject line said, Architecture V2, Kinesis Stream Pipeline. The body was short. I had written, here's the revised diagram. Note the OAuth layer on the left? It changed significantly. The auth flow is reworked for multi-tenant isolation. Take a look and let me know if you want any changes. No changes were ever requested. No questions were ever asked. I saw his reply, sent 20 minutes later. It said, simply, looks good. That was his entire technical contribution to the architecture. 2 words, looks good. I checked the timestamp on my email, 9:40 p.m. I checked his reply, 10:01 p.m. I saved both. Then I pulled up the decision log, the internal document where every major technical choice was recorded. I scrolled through the entries. There was the Kinesis Stream Pipeline decision, logged in February. The initials beside it had originally been mine. M.R. Maya Rhodes. But when I looked at the live version, the initials had been changed to N.F. Derek's initials. He hadn't just taken credit for the diagram. He had rewritten the historical record of which decisions were made, as if I had never been in the room. I clicked into the document's revision history. The change was made on the Thursday at 9:14 a.m., a day I had been in the office working on the token schema. I remembered that Thursday. I had eaten lunch at my desk at a meeting that ran long, and I had been in the building the entire time. He had changed it while I was 40 feet away, drinking lukewarm coffee. I closed the decision log and opened the weekly status meeting notes. Every Friday, Derek presented the project's progress to the senior team. I had never attended those meetings. I'd always assumed he was giving my work credit in passing, mentioning my name, keeping the records straight. I pulled up the notes from the last 8 weeks. My name appeared exactly once. In week 1, spelling my name right. After that, it was Derek finalized the schema. It was Derek reworked the OAuth layer. It was Derek redesigned the architecture to support multi-tenant isolation. Every entry had his name next to it. Every decision I had made was now his. The token schema that I drew on a whiteboard, the auth flow I reworked line by line, the security model I obsessed over for 3 days. All of it attributed to him. I started a new folder. I named it Evidence. Not important, not personal, just evidence. Methodical. Clean. I saved the screenshots of the version histories. I saved the email timestamps. I saved the decision log revisions. I saved the status meeting notes. I even added a separate document, my own chronological record of what I remembered building and when I built it. The architecture diagram, late January. The token schema, early February. The OAuth layer, mid-February. The Kinesis pipeline, late February. I knew the dates because I had lived them in my own handwriting on sticky notes that were still on my monitor. By lunchtime, the folder had 12 files in it. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall for a moment. There was no rage, no trembling hands. What I felt was something colder, something steadier. I felt like an accountant who had finally found the missing receipt. The story was complete. The trail was clean. Then I opened the demo file, the one Derek would present on Thursday. I opened its version history, the file properties. The author metadata. Under author, it said Derek Farrow. I checked the creation date. The demo had originally been built the week before. I knew who built it. I had spent 11 hours on Tuesday writing the script, mapping the architecture, structuring the narrative. But the metadata said Derek. He hadn't just changed it on the slide. He had changed it in the deepest level of the file, the level that tells you who actually created it. I stared at those 2 words for a long time. Derek Farrow. The man who had never once asked me a technical question. The man who called the OAuth layer the thing with the keys. I had heard him describe it that way on a call with a vendor, the thing with the keys, as if I hadn't spent 40 hours designing that exact system. As if the keys weren't the entire reason the system could safely handle a single user, much less 10,000. That was when I knew this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, a long, deliberate, practiced pattern of erasing me. And I had the receipts to prove it. The demo script was 97 pages long. I know that because I counted them. Math is a comfort when the world makes no sense, and the world was making less sense by the page. Derek had written the first 2 pages. I could tell. They were all buzzwords: synergy, streamlined, low-friction adoption, nothing about the actual system. Page 3 onwards was me. My words, my diagrams, my carefully worded explanations of the token schema and the data pipeline. I read his speaker notes for slide 14. That was the scalability slide, the one where he promised the client 10,000 concurrent users. I read it again. Then I read it a third time because I was sure I was misreading. 10,000. The architecture supported 2,000. I knew that like I knew my own birthday. I designed the whole system around 2,000. There was a hard ceiling at 2,200, and even that required the rate limiter to work overtime. 10,000 would melt the servers in about 40 seconds. The load balancers would crash. The database would lock up. It would fail in front of the client, in front of the CEO, in front of everyone. And Derek didn't know. That was the part that hit me like a freight train. Derek had approved this number. He had written it into the script. But he couldn't tell me why the system would fail because he didn't understand the system at all. The man had been leading this project for 2 months. 2 months of meetings, of status updates, of taking credit for every diagram I drew and every decision I logged. And in all that time, he had never once asked me how the load balancers were configured. He had never asked about the database connection pool. He had never asked about the absolute maximum number of users the system could handle. He had just written a big, impressive-looking number in the demo because it looked good. Because 10,000 sounds better than 2,000. Because Derek always picked the number that made him look better, regardless of whether it was true. I closed the script and sat back in my chair. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my laptop. It was 11:42 at night, and I had a decision to make. I could let it happen. Let him stand up there tomorrow, promise the client the impossible, and watch him crater when they asked the inevitable questions. It would be satisfying. Oh, it would be so satisfying. He deserved it, but that meant the project failed. That meant the $2 million contract fell through. That meant Brightline lost a client, and good people lost their work, and Tom from Nexicorp would walk away thinking our team was incompetent. Derek would fall, but I would fall with him. The project would die, and my work of the last 3 months, the architecture and the design and the 40 hours I spent on the OAuth layer, all of it would go into the trash. I opened my phone and stared at the clock. 11:46. I pulled up my email. I started typing. Hello, I am a member of the Brightline team. I wanted to flag a potential concern regarding the Nexicorp demo scheduled for tomorrow. The capacity figures in the presentation do not match the architecture as currently built. I suggest a review before the client meeting. Then I stopped. I thought about what would happen if I sent it. I saved a draft. I composed a second email, more detailed, with the actual technical breakdown. I wrote about the connection pool limits and the load balancer configuration. I explained that 10,000 concurrent users would cause a critical failure within 30 seconds of the demonstration environment reaching peak load. Then I deleted my name from the signature. I had a separate email address for personal things. This would come from there. I wrote a note for the assistant. I knew her name, Karen. She had been at Brightline for 9 years, and she screened everything that reached Mr. Chen. I didn't know how she would handle an anonymous tip. I didn't know if she would even read it. At 11:59, I looked at the draft. It had the key facts, the numbers, the risk. None of it was written in a way that pointed to me. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop. The screen went dark, and I saw my reflection staring back at me. Tomorrow, I would be in that room. I had no idea what Derek would do. And for the first time all night, that thought made me smile. The conference room at Brightline had never felt bigger than it did at 10 in the morning on Thursday, March 13th. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over downtown Austin, and the long walnut table could have seated 20 people comfortably. Today, only 6 chairs were filled, but the tension made the empty space feel heavy. I sat in the back, one row behind the executives, my chair pushed against the wall. Close enough to see Derek's face, far enough to be invisible. He stood at the front with the confidence of a man who had rehearsed his opening 3 times that morning. I knew because I had arrived at 7:58, 2 minutes early, and heard him in the empty room practicing. The Nexacorp integration, Derek said, clicking to his first slide, represents a $2 million commitment to scalable, enterprise-ready architecture. His voice was smooth. The words sounded right. Anyone listening would have believed he understood them. Mr. Chen sat at the head of the table, his fingers steepled. He nodded once. Across from him sat Tom, the CTO from Nexacorp, and he was different from the rest of us. He wore a plain gray sweater, no tie. He had not touched the coffee. And when he looked at slides, he did not look at the images. He looked at the corners, the footnotes, the small print. Derek walked through the first 20 minutes flawlessly. The migration strategy, the phased rollout, the integration points. He paused at all the right moments, smiled at all the right people, and credited his team whenever a specific technical decision came up. A deliberate word, team. It let him take credit without naming a name. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I had not brought the evidence folder with me. I had brought a tablet with the backup demo tucked in my bag out of sight. The slide about system performance came up at 10:43. Derek clicked to a chart showing projected user loads and spoke with the confidence he had maintained all morning. The platform comfortably handles our expected growth trajectory. We've stress-tested for peak concurrency, and the architecture scales horizontally with the container cluster. Tom leaned forward. He tilted his head the way people do when they are deciding whether to ask the question. I had seen that look before, in dozens of pitch meetings. It meant the small print had caught his attention. "I'm curious about the numbers," Tom said. "What's the maximum concurrent user load you validated with the current architecture?" Derek paused. "Just a beat too long. We've modeled for high volume," he said. "The demo shows 10,000 concurrent users without degradation." "Validated," Tom said. "Not modeled. Have you actually tested 10,000 concurrent?" The room went still. Derek looked at his laptop. He clicked a slide, then clicked back. "We ran simulations during the build phase. The metrics are all consistent with industry benchmarks." Tom did not smile. "Which load testing tool did you use?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it. He glanced at Mr. Chen, then at the slide again. "We used a combination of tools," he said. "The results are in the appendix." "The appendix has the projections," Tom said. Not the test results. I read the appendix this morning. Derek's face went pale. I had stayed silent the whole time. I had promised myself I would let him fail on his own because he had to fail. He had to feel the rope slip before I reached out to grab it. But I also knew exactly what the system could handle, and I knew that 2,000 concurrent users was the ceiling, with a hard limit at 2,200 before the data store choked and the queues backed up. 30 seconds after that, the API would start returning 503 errors. If Tom had asked for a live test at 10,000, Derek would have crashed the whole system in front of the CEO, the client, and every backup in the building. Derek has been focused on the business side of the rollout, I said. My voice carried across the room. Every head turned. I remained seated, calm. The technical load testing was performed by the engineering team, and the actual validated ceiling is 2,000 concurrent users with a hard limit at 2,200. We built the architecture deliberately to scale horizontally, so we would need to add additional nodes to reach 10,000. The project timeline accounts for that expansion in Phase 2. Tom looked at me directly for the first time. You're the architect? Yes, Maya Rhodes, Senior Software Architect. He nodded slowly. Can you elaborate on the hard limit? I stood up, not because I needed to, because I wanted Derek to watch me do it. The data store becomes the bottleneck at 2,000 concurrent connections, I said. The queue starts to back up, and we have a retry mechanism with exponential backoff, but past 2,200 the system can't drain fast enough. That's a hard ceiling. To get to 10,000, we would add 3 more read replicas to the cluster and partition the job queue. With the current code base, that's roughly 2 weeks of engineering time and the $50,000 adjustment the budget already accounted for in Phase 2. The room went silent. Mr. Chen leaned forward. He had been watching me with an expression I could not read, but now there was something else in his eyes. He said 4 words. Maya, please continue. I walked to the front of the room. Derek stepped back without a word, his hand still hovering over the clicker. I held out my palm. He placed it in my hand like a man surrendering. Relief, probably, and shame. Neither was my concern. I clicked back to the architecture slide and took a breath. I knew every line of that diagram. I had drawn it in late January at 9:40 in the evening, alone in my apartment, with a cup of tea I never finished. It was a house of cards on that screen, but I was the one holding the glue. I'll walk you through the system from the ground up, I said. And I'll be honest about every number on these slides. I felt the clicker cool against my palm, solid and real. No going back. The slide was warm in my hands, not physically. But I felt the weight of it. Every line on that diagram was a late night. Every box and arrow was a decision I made alone. I started with the architecture, the base structure, the way the services talk to each other. I explained it the way you explain a building you helped pour. Not the way you read about it, the way you know it. Derek stood near the wall. He was 6 feet from me. He might as well have been in another country. I clicked to the next slide. The authentication flow. That was mine too. 40 hours over 3 weeks in February. I talked about the token schema, the expiration policies, the refresh logic. I referenced the email I sent to Derek on Thursday evening weeks ago. He never replied to that one. He just put his name on the document. Tom, the client's CTO, leaned forward. He was wearing a plain gray sweater. No tie. He looked like a man who cared about substance. How are you handling token revocation? He asked. I smiled. I had written that section of the design doc. I had annotated it twice after review comments. Glad you asked, I said. The revocation list is in Redis. It's cached at the edge. Worst-case latency is 200 milliseconds. Worst case, meaning the data store is cold and we're at the peak of a traffic spike. Tom nodded slowly. He asked another question. Then another. Each one went deeper into the system. Each one I answered with specifics, file names, function names, the exact error codes the system would throw if a database connection dropped. Derek stopped looking at the screen. He started looking at his shoes. I didn't gloat. There was no moment of cruelty. I simply did the thing I had always done. I did my job. The slide about system performance came up. I saw the number, 10,000 concurrent users, the number that would have brought the whole system down in 30 seconds. The number Derek had put in bold on the slide. I clicked past it without skipping a beat. The architecture supports a validated ceiling of 2,000 concurrent users, I said, with a hard limit at 2,200. To reach a higher number, we'd need 3 more read replicas and a partition job queue. That's about 2 weeks of engineering time. Tom wrote something down. He didn't look angry. He looked relieved, like someone who had been afraid of getting a landmine and was glad to be shown the map. That's the honest answer, he said. Thank you. I kept going. The next slide covered monitoring. The one after that covered rollback procedures. I told them about the incident in the staging environment. The one where I caught a memory leak at 2 a.m. I described the fix. I described the test I wrote afterward so it would never happen again. Mr. Chen, the CEO, was silent the whole time. He sat at the head of the table. His eyes never left me. Not once. At the end, I summarized the roadmap. The next 4 quarters, the milestones, the risks. I closed the laptop and rested my hands on top of it. That's where we are, I said, and that's where I'll take us. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody spoke. Then Tom was the first to move. He stood up, walked around the table, and shook my hand. That was the clearest technical presentation I've seen in years, he said. Seriously, thank you. Derek was already at the door. He was packing his laptop into his bag with quick, jerky movements. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything. He just left. I turned back to the table. Mr. Chen was standing now. He straightened his jacket. Maya, he said, I'd like to see you in my office. When you have a moment. Of course, I said. He left. Tom followed. And I stood there in the empty conference room. This was the same room where, 2 days ago, I watched Derek delete my name from a slide. Now, I had just delivered his project to the client. Flawlessly. The way I had built it, I packed my bag. My tablet was still inside, with my backup demo I never needed. My hand brushed against a folder of evidence. 12 files, emails, timestamps, version histories, the initials that used to be mine. I walked out into the hallway. I did not run, did not smile, but I knew what I was going to do tomorrow. I was going to walk into Sarah's office, and I was going to hand her that folder. The next morning, I walked into Sarah's office at 9:15. She was already at her desk, reading something on her screen. She looked up when I knocked. Maya, she said. Come in. Coffee? No, thank you. I sat down across from her. I placed the folder on her desk. It was a plain manila folder, the kind you can buy in any office supply store. 12 files inside, everything I had collected in 3 days. Sarah looked at the folder, then at me. What is this? Evidence, I said. She opened it. The first page was the screenshot comparing version 37 and version 38 of the architecture spec. My version. His version. The name change highlighted in yellow. She went through the pages slowly. The email timestamps. My architecture diagram sent at 9:40 on a Tuesday night in late January. Derek's reply at 10:01. Looks good. Nothing else. The decision log. The Kinesis Stream pipeline entry from February. My initials, MR, typed clean in the author field. Then a Thursday revision, changing them to NF. I had scrubbed the author name from the logs for the comparison. The weekly status meeting notes, 8 weeks of them. Her name appearing once, in week 1, under attendees. She closed the folder. Her face was neutral. This is extensive, she said. I know. You've been collecting this for a while. No, I said. 3 days. I started on Tuesday. I wish I had started sooner. Sarah nodded slowly. She tapped the folder with her finger. Do you know why Derek was assigned as project lead? She asked. I wasn't expecting that question. I assumed he was the most senior, I said. He wasn't. She said it flatly. No judgment, just fact. He was assigned because he volunteered. And because he's been good at managing up. She paused. And because he's done this before. Done what exactly? The pattern, Maya. Take on a high-profile project. Present it well. Take the credit. Leave when the technical work outweighs the talking. She looked at me. We've had complaints, too, in the last year and a half. But never with documentation like this. I understood what she meant. Nobody had ever been prepared to prove it. I was. I need to ask, she said. Is there anything here that's about revenge? I met her eyes. I built that system, Sarah. I drew that architecture. I wrote that token schema. I stayed up until 2 in the morning catching a memory leak in staging. I spent 11 hours writing the demo script that Derek read from word for word. I leaned forward slightly. This isn't revenge. It's an accounting. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'm going to open a formal review, she said. This will go to Mr. Chen, and we'll convene a small panel. You'll need to make yourself available this week. Well, one more thing, she said. Don't talk to Derek about this. I won't. She stood. I'm sorry this happened, Maya. It shouldn't have taken this long to notice. I stood too. I felt 15 pounds lighter, even though I had carried nothing into that room but paper. At 4 in the afternoon, Mr. Chen's assistant, Karen, sent me a meeting invite. Her calendar. 4:30, direct. I walked into his office at 4:29. 1 minute early. He was standing at the window looking over downtown Austin. The spring light was hard and bright. Maya, he said, turning. Mr. Chen. It not. I sat. He sat across from me. I watched you on Thursday, he said. You didn't flinch. You didn't even look surprised when the CTO asked the question. You knew he would ask it, didn't you? I did know. I had read the demo script the night before and known exactly what Tom would catch. So I gave a small, honest nod. I knew the system limits, I said. I knew what the demo claimed. He studied me for a moment. Derek is being placed on administrative leave, he said. Pending the investigation. Sarah informed me this afternoon. He paused. I want you to lead the project going forward. Effective, immediately. I felt the weight of it settle on me. The client asked for you personally, he said. So you know. These words stayed with me. For 2 years, people like Derek had risen by taking from people like me. But this time, the client had asked for me. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, he said. You earned it. I just have a better view than I used to. I left his office at 5. As I came around the corner into the main corridor, I saw him, Derek, standing by the elevator, a box in his hands. His belongings. His face was pale. He saw me. His mouth opened. He started to say something. I kept walking past him toward the exit. I had nothing left to say to him. The investigation took 2 weeks. That was what most people never understood. The part they saw was the presentation, the moment Derek froze and I answered. But the real work happened in rooms without windows, with Sarah walking me through the process, one document at a time. She interviewed 14 people. She pulled 2 years of project records. She found the same pattern in 3 other projects before mine. Every time, a junior engineer or an associate architect would do the work, and Derek would appear at the final review to glow in the reflected light. Every time, someone else moved on before they could complain. I later learned that one of those people had filed a complaint 2 years before I even joined Brightline. It had gone nowhere. He had no screenshots, no version history, no copy of the email where Derek had replied, "Looks good," to work. He now claimed as his own. I had everything. Derek was placed on administrative leave on Monday, March 17th. I remember that date because it was the same day the spring flowers came out along the walk into the office. I saw his office being packed into boxes. His plants, his framed motivational posters, the little sign on his desk that said, "Success leaves clues." He was gone by Friday. HR always got the resignation notice in writing. Sarah told me she had never seen a cleaner exit in her 10 years there, but that wasn't the part that stayed with me. The part that stayed with me was the technical recruiter who called me 6 months later. He worked at a large agency in Chicago. He said he was running a background check on a candidate who had listed Brightline as a reference. He asked if I remembered a Derek Farrow. I did. He said there was a gap in Derek's employment history. A long one, 12 months and counting. One employer after another had turned him down, and the recruiter wanted to know why. I told him I couldn't discuss former colleagues, but I mentioned that I was happy to confirm dates of employment. That was all. Dates, not details. The market did the rest on its own. People in our industry talk. The Nexicorp story got around. The version where the project lead froze in front of the client and the architect saved a $2 million deal. That story told itself. I never had to say a word. The client reached out the same week Derek left. Tom, the CTO, sent a formal request through his own procurement office. He asked for me by name, not by role, by name. He wanted the architect who could actually describe the latency under load. He wanted the person who said 2,000 with a hard ceiling at 2,200 before the data store chokes. I read that in the contract, his words, not mine. They were written in the Phase 2 scope, attached as an exhibit. It meant the Phase 2 adjustment, the scaling work that would have cost the company $50,000 to fix if Derek's numbers had gone through, was now a line item for the right person to handle. That person was me. Mr. Chen promoted me to lead the project on Monday, March 24th. I got the corner office on the 4th floor, the one with the glass wall that looks over downtown Austin. It had been empty for 8 months, ever since the previous director left. When I sat down behind the desk for the first time, I realized I could see the conference room from where Derek used to stand during his little rehearsals. I did not rehearse. I had no one to fool. The salary adjustment came as a form letter. Standard review. They moved me to 160, matching what Derek had been making. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. The math was already obvious to everyone in the building. That was 4 months ago. The Nexicorp project is in Phase 3 now. On schedule, on budget. I have a team of 6 engineers, and I have made a point of writing their names on every slide. Every document, every commit, names matter. I learned that at a cost, but I learned it. I took my mother to dinner on a Thursday night, late March. She asked if I felt bad about what happened to Derek. I thought about it. I thought about the name on the slide, the file he deleted, the 11 hours I spent writing a script he would never even see. "No," I said, "I don't feel bad. I feel like it was time." The thing is, I still have all of it. The email timestamps, the version 37 to version 38 screenshot, the decision log, 12 files in a folder that never gets opened anymore. I keep it in a drawer beside my desk, under a stack of printouts I don't need. Not to use, just to know it's there, because the best revenge was never the presentation. It was never the folder of evidence. It was living a life so full of honest work that his name became the footnote in my story, not the other way around. That's the quiet part everyone misses. Derek wasn't destroyed by my anger. He was undone by my competence. He built his career on stolen architecture, and the moment someone asked him to explain it, the building collapsed on its own. I still think about that sometimes, in meetings, on the walk back from lunch, when I see the light hit the skyline outside my office. I think about how easy it is to be charming and how hard it is to explain a partition key strategy at 7 in the morning to a client who actually reads the docs. I take the hard part. Every time. It pays better and it never lies. Thank you for listening to my story. If it made you smile or if it felt familiar in any way, please like and subscribe. There is always more where this came from.